Thank you, everybody, for attending this afternoon's event. It's truly a pleasure here to host you. This is our third annual Ivy Insider. My name is Peter Davos. I'm the founder and CEO of Hale Education Group. And we're very proud to host some of our high-achieving students that have very graciously agreed to share their experiences with the audience, particularly the younger students who may be thinking about applying to U.S. universities and may have many misperceptions about the process. I think when we look at high achievers, we believe them to be superheroes, that they achieved their set of acceptances in a very linear fashion, without any ups and downs, without any obstacles, without bouts of self-doubt. And that's really not the case. So it's very interesting to hear directly from the students that have achieved what many of you, I believe, aspire to achieve, and for them to share what were some of the greatest pitfalls and what is some advice that is usable that you can take with you, hopefully, and maybe implement into your own strategies and plans. The purpose of this panel is to share experiences. It's going to be a casual conversation, definitely interactive. We're going to have about 45 minutes of questions to the panelists, and then we're going to have about 45 minutes of Q&A that we highly encourage all audience members to engage in. If anyone has individual questions for the panelists after the presentation or for the team, we'll also be here. I'd like to thank especially our partners who are here with us this afternoon. We have Fiona, who's a very good friend of mine from Carfax Education. Carfax is a specialist in UK admissions. They're a global education consultancy. They're also quite skilled when it comes to tutoring, and they have offices here in Knowledge Village right next door. Also, there are three colleagues of mine from LCR. LCR specializes in helping students secure green cards through the EB-5 investor program, which has been around for 30 years in the US, which allows students a pathway to become citizens, which allows for easier admission to US universities, and the ability to stay and work in the US after graduation. The three colleagues, Sherman, Rogelio, there they are, and Raj, are all Harvard grads, so you're in good company here. Thank you for coming. And if anybody would like to engage them, they will be here at the back of the auditorium to answer questions at the conclusion of our presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to thank the entire Hale team, most of whom are here. These are only 5 students. We had quite a few more that we worked very diligently with to deliver our best set of results ever. We had acceptances to all 8 Ivy League schools this year, also MIT, Stanford, Chicago, Harvard, Tufts, Amherst, Williams, all the UCs, and many others. So we're very proud that we continue to go from strength to strength in terms of the results that we're able to deliver. We also help students secure over $9 million in US scholarships and hope to build on that foundation as we move forward. I'd like to introduce the panelists. This is why we're here, to hear from our very gracious and precocious young men and women who now are embarking on probably the most exciting part of their educational journey. And I would just like for each of you to please introduce yourself. Just state your name, where you're from, where you'll be studying, and what you'll be studying, starting with Parth.
Hey, I'm Parth Garg. I'm from Abu Dhabi. I study in Bright Rider School, and I'll be going to Stanford next year.
Hi, I'm Meeran Fehmi. I go to Dubai College, and I'll be attending the University of Pennsylvania next year.
Hello, I'm Marie Dayan. I come from Lebanon. I'm from a school in Lebanon called Collège Notre-Dame de Jamhour, and I'll be attending MIT next year.
Hello everyone, I'm Amrit Iyer. I study at GEMS Modern Academy, and next year I'll be joining Georgia Institute of Technology.
Hi everyone, I'm Hisham Matani. I'm attending Cornell University next fall, and I'll be majoring in hospitality and business management, and I go to Dubai College.
Hello everyone, I'm not a student. My name is Darius Hale, and I'm the Public Relations Director at Hale Education Group. I graduated from Dartmouth College as class marshal, but today I'll be co-moderating this panel. Thank you very much.
I think, Dar, you were asked in the elevator one time what grade you were in by one of our students, right?
Yes, I get that very often, but unfortunately I'm not that young anymore.
It was your birthday yesterday?
It was my birthday yesterday.
And how old are you now?
26.
Dari Sayo, everyone. Excellent. So I'd like to ask the first question to you, Parth. Not only did you secure acceptance to the most selective university in the United States, Stanford, who has stopped publishing its admission statistics. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just become so ridiculous that they don't even want to share that information with others now, but it was at 4.2%, I think, last year. I think what's particularly interesting about your journey is that you came from a relatively new school in Abu Dhabi, and one that has not a CBSE school, Indian curriculum school, and one that has never sent a student to a leading US university. Most of the students from there graduate and go to universities in India or locally.
Yeah.
So I think you had quite a few more obstacles to overcome than maybe some of the other panelists. Could you maybe share a little bit about your experiences and how difficult that was?
So the fact that I was studying in an Indian school meant that not a lot of people knew about the admission process in the United States. So I had to make sure that I found the right people at the right time to help me out. I had to talk to my counselors at Hale, make them understand that not everything is going to be smooth sailing at my school, and they really helped me out with that. So they talked to my teachers, told them how to write my recommendation letters, and I had to get my school a SEEP code. So what College Board does is it assigns a code to every school, and our school, being new and an Indian school, never had one. So I went to my principal and told him, we really need a SEEP code if we are going to put our school on the map for the United States colleges. So I went and got that done. So I think that really helped.
That wasn't the only obstacle I think you had to overcome, but I think you were someone that, with very kind of limited resources, were able to create magic, right? You were able to make a tremendous impact from just your own initiatives and endeavors. So can you tell us a little bit about the activities that you're most proud of, or the achievements outside the classroom you're most proud of?
So about 2 years ago, I started this organization in Abu Dhabi known as Club Rise 80. So we started with 3 students, and now we're a group of 350 students. And what we do is we go around Abu Dhabi and try to make the life of people over there better. So we have cleanup, we have mental health seminars, we have book donation drives, we have clothes collection drives. It's a platform for students to come together, meet each other, and explore new things. And that's what I'm most proud about.
And I think one of the complaints I hear from many students regularly is that, oh, there are no opportunities at my school to do X, Y, or Z. But you're someone who created an opportunity, and an opportunity that then became an initiative that spread way beyond the confines of your school walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was the main reason, actually. So back in grade 10, we were looking for something to do, some opportunities to volunteer, but we never saw anything in Abu Dhabi. So me and my friend got together, we were like, why wait for it? Why not create an opportunity? So we got a group of friends together, we told them this is our plan, let's move forward. And they were like, yeah, it's nice. So that's what we try to do. We try to give platform to each and every student that we meet, and they really come around.
And that's what I view as, and I know many of the university admissions officers view as, true leadership. Too many times students think that having a title, that they're president of this club or president of that club, really means something, but they don't have anything to show beyond maybe a uniform day or a monthly meeting. Whereas your impact was very measurable, and you have left a legacy now that will outlive your tenure at the school, right? Which I think was pretty critical in you achieving the success that you did. I'd also like to ask you if you could share a little bit more about maybe some of the challenges with the writing or the application process itself.
So I'm a student who's interested in STEM. So I don't know how, and if you know that, but I had problems with English, and I guess most of you do. So people say that it can either be English related or STEM related. So when I joined Hale, I wasn't such a good writer, but Hale helped me out. They told me that I just need to explore what I've done, figure out stories, and put them in good words.
So how long did it take you to finish your personal statement?
Too long, 4 months.
4 months for one piece of writing that was 650 words long. But in the end, I believe you received a very nice note from your Stanford admissions officer. Mm-hmm. And what did he write?
He wrote that he loved my personal statement. And he even wrote a few specific comments about the other essays that the counselors helped me out with.
Okay, very good. Excellent. So Parth was able to achieve, I think, what many aspire to, but few do. I don't know if there were any other acceptances, undergraduate acceptances to Stanford this year from the UAE. Are you aware of any others?
I'm not sure.
Okay, great, wonderful. Sorry.
So next we have Meeran. Meeran, you have been accepted to UPenn's Viper program, one of the most competitive STEM programs in the nation. It actually takes only 25 applicants per year. However, despite your success, we know that the application process is a emotionally draining one and a difficult one. Can you share your lowest moment throughout the application process and how you dealt with it?
So for me, by far the most disappointing moment was my ED result. So I ED'd to Dartmouth, and prior to that I was extremely cocky. So in terms of qualitatively, I had a 34 ACT, I had 2 A stars, 2 A's predicted. I thought I was going places. I thought Dartmouth was for sure going to accept me. So on June 15th at 1 a.m. when I opened up that email, it said, "We are very sorry to inform you." So I thought, hang on, let's wait 10 minutes, they've sent me the wrong email for sure. Sadly, that was not the case. I waited 10 more minutes, refreshed the email, same email. That's when I had to go down to my parents and tell them I got rejected, and it was probably the most disappointing feeling I've ever had. But the lesson I learned from it was, instead of drowning in self-pity, me, Dari, and my mother, big thanks to her, really helped me out. And we looked over our essays and we really polished them up. And I said, okay, I'm putting my best foot forward for my regular decisions. And thankfully, I got accepted to UPenn. So my lesson to everyone is, first of all, be humble. The process is very random. And you'll end up where you fit, where you belong. And that really happened to me. Like, I feel right now, UPenn is probably the place for me and exactly where I want to be. And Dari went to Dartmouth, but who really cares about Dartmouth, let's be honest.
I thought we had an agreement here.
Can I just ask by a show of hands of all the panelists, who was rejected in the early rounds? Can you raise your hands? So
I got rejected too, but I got accepted too.
you were deferred.
No. I got rejected from Caltech,
Yes.
but I got accepted at MIT early.
At MIT early,
Yeah.
which is not a bad consolation prize.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Marie-Diane, to share again your own initial feelings of having to overcome, and maybe for all the panelists, since everyone went through this same experience, but what did it feel like to find out that Caltech didn't say yes to you?
Well, it's weird because I really liked Caltech when I visited it, but I felt like I didn't really belong to Caltech as much as I felt like at home when I visited MIT. So I felt like if the admission officers were going to realize that too, they're not going to accept me, because they accept people that are good, obviously, but they also accept people that fit with the school. And because I didn't feel like I fit with that school a lot, I kind of knew before even opening the letter that I wouldn't be accepted. So I wasn't too sad, but of course, because I got my rejection before the acceptance of MIT, I was like, oh my God, I got rejected from Caltech, and now what's gonna happen with MIT, you know? So I stressed out a bit more, but it was fine. I talked to a lot of people about the process, and everyone told me, like, it's fine, you're gonna get rejections, and don't be scared, you'll end up where you need to be. And I really believe that now too.
But it's difficult once you're going through it to believe that.
It is difficult, but you have to just don't give up, you know? Trust, I don't know.
Parth, you have a different story regarding your early application process. Although it is a happy ending right now, how did it go for you?
So I applied to Stanford early, and unlike Mary, who didn't belong to Caltech, as she said, I completely believed that Stanford was a school that I wanted to go to, and I thought that I belonged to Stanford. So when I opened the letter at 3 a.m. in the morning, it came out a week earlier, and I wasn't expecting it. And I opened the letter, and it said that I had been deferred. And for me, it was like a shock, because I knew that nobody who gets deferred really gets in. So the next day, I go into Hale, and Tim, my counselor, is waiting for me at the door. I was 20 minutes late. He's like, what happened? I'm like, I got deferred. And he's like, wait, calm down. That's a thing to be proud about, because only 4 to 5% of applicants get deferred, unlike at other schools who defer like 85% of the applicants. So at that point, I really got my hope back, and I started working on my application further to give them my letter of continued interest, and I think that really got me in.
Among other activities, such as your summer at Stanford, where you took classes with 60 students, some of whom were Stanford students. And can you tell us a little bit about that? That was also a defining factor, possibly?
So I spent my last summer at Stanford, And I took a course in cosmology. So we had 60 students in that class, around 40 of whom were the Stanford students, and 20 were high school students. I actually came first in that class. I got the highest grade, and the professor wrote me a letter of recommendation. I think that really helped my application and helped me stand out.
Great. Marie Diane, you also conducted research last summer at Stanford.
Yeah. So I was in the Aero-Astro department, aerospace engineering, and I was working at a lab with PhD students. So I actually went and I didn't know how to code, I didn't know anything. And the professor looked at me and he was like, so you know how to code, right? And I looked at him and I was like, no. And so he was really shocked, and he told me, well, you have to learn in like 2 weeks or else like it's not gonna work. So I came back the first day of the internship. I was really stressed out, but it was fine. I learned how to code, and I helped a PhD student with his thesis. It was really, really interesting. Yeah.
Great.
So our students have been talking about rejection, deferral from the early process, and also mentioning what best fit means to them. Amrit, your story is also one of a tear at the beginning, being rejected from your ED school. Was that a surprise? Did you think you were a competitive applicant when you started this process?
All right, putting it into context, I applied to University of Pennsylvania in the ED program, and I applied for this dual degree called Management Technology, and they usually accept around 50 students annually, and they boast rates of decimal. I don't know if it's true, but many sources on the internet do state that the rates this year have really dropped into the decimals. But talking about as an applicant, I felt I was always a very strong applicant. I have worked over the last 4 years, strengthening my applications in terms of academics, extracurriculars, social service, all of that. I tried to tackle all of that in such a way that I could, give a whole holistic application give a holistic application to the university. However, when I started consolidating this, and when the application cycle came in, I realized that I did not have that pull. I've been playing soccer for the last 5-6 years. I've been part of a drama group. I've done social service, but these are, I'm sure if I ask all the students over here to raise their hands, how many of them are soccer players, I can guarantee you at least 25% of them will put their hands up. So there's nothing unique that, would get me into a program at a school which is so competitive. So then Dari and I, we sat together and we are like, I need to do something that, makes me stand out. And around that time, I was taking part in this competition called the Young Entrepreneurs Competition, where my team and I were selling eco-friendly disposables. This was a 3-day competition, and we had worked hard on that, but it was then that it struck us that why not continue this whole thing? Like, that was a 3-day process, but that didn't mean that I was supposed to be restricted to those 3 days only. So from there, we devised a plan in such a way that I could set up this same business in Dubai and become a young entrepreneur. However, there were a lot of catches in that because the UAE law does not allow you to be an entrepreneur and officially be an entrepreneur under the age of 18. So I couldn't really establish my business, but that again did not stop me. I went on, I created a Facebook page. I used social media such as WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I promoted the use of eco-friendly disposable instead of plastic. And I spread this in my school, in my community, among my friends and family. And while it wasn't more, I didn't do it really for the monetary aspect of it. It was more of because my ultimate goal in life is to be an entrepreneur. So I wanted to get an experience of that and also do some good to the society at the same time. And I felt that this gave a whole different touch to my application in a way that it consolidated my future goal with what I'm doing. And also, it is being an entrepreneur is not something that common, especially for a student applying from the UAE.
I'd also say, in terms of persistence, no one was more persistent, Amrit, than you when it came to setting a goal and then following through with that goal. In order to secure acceptance to a school like Georgia Tech, especially its engineering department, you're expected to have at least 2 perfect SAT 2s in math level 2 and physics or chemistry. I think you started off at a lower baseline than perfect scores, but can you tell us a little bit about your SAT 2 journey?
All right, so when I came in for my first diagnostic test at Hale, I started with a 580 in physics and a 630 in math subject 2. And I'm studying IB diploma, and I have math and physics as my HL subjects. And for a student who's doing, those are really rigorous courses for those who don't know. And someone who's doing that, trust me when I say this, when you get scores like that on your subject SATs, you're gonna get trashed. You're like, I'm doing such a difficult course at school, and how am I not able to do a subject SAT? Anyways, I went and I sat down with Malusi. I'm not sure if he's somewhere around here, but I don't know where exactly he is. But I sat down with him, and then we went through the entire answer key, and we checked, where are my weak areas, where are places where I can improve, and what are my strengths. So what Malusi and I did was literally, we broke down the entire coursework of both the subjects into specific chapters such that, we identified them into strengths, weaknesses, and something in the middle where, I need to improve a little, but I'm not weak in that section of the chapter. So we split it in such a way, and then for the weak chapters, I took proper classes, and we, started everything from the basics. For the strong, I improved them basically through tests, and for the medium ones, I we spent a little time on them, but we didn't linger around with that. We didn't go back to the basics. We just worked on the areas of weakness. And through this entire thing, and multiple tests, I'm sure including both subjects, I gave around 25 to 30 tests over the course of around 2.5 months. I used to come in every Saturday, give 2 papers, get it corrected, then sit, analyze each and every paper, and I slowly started seeing that improvement. And ultimately, in my final test, I got a double 800 in both the tests.
And with that double 800, you got into one of the top mechanical engineering programs in the United States in Georgia Tech. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Engineering is one of the most popular tracks here, especially here in the UAE. 1 out of 3 students, I would say, is interested in engineering or STEM. So what would your message be to the young aspiring engineering students here today?
All right, first of all, as I told before also, even a score of 400 or 500 on the SATs should not stop you. You can always work. There are many people who are there around to help you. Never be discouraged by that. But more importantly, as an Indian student especially, you often hear statistics like every 1 in 2 students tends to go for engineering or doctor and stuff like that. But if you want to do engineering, it is about you. If you think you have the caliber, if you have that interest and that passion to take subjects like math and physics, which require a lot of dedication, hard work, passion, and you need to have the caliber to do it. If you think you're such a student, only then you must step into it. Don't let family or friends or counselor or anybody force you into something like STEM, because there are so many students. I have so many friends who are going into fields like journalism, media, economics, and I'm pretty sure they're going to do much better than I do maybe. But don't be forced into a field just because it seems attractive in terms of future. Secondly, if you want to do engineering, the best thing I can say to you is go for something to do with internship or research, or if you think you're ready to go, maybe for a summer program. Like some of them did mention they went over here for a summer program, but I did not want to really go to the US for a summer program, mainly because of the monetary reasons. I did not want to put up a lot of financial burden in my senior year or my junior year on my parents. So the next best thing that I thought I could do was an internship. So my senior year summer, I did an internship in this department called Building Information Modeling in a company called Mott MacDonald. So basically, if I break it down to very simple terms, we model, the department models, different types of building, different kind of infrastructure for the government, for different entities. So as part of that team, I learned to use this software called Revit, which is basically the integral part of the entire engineering industry. And from using Revit, we can make different models. So as a mock modeling assignment that I was given, I made a metro station for this for Sydney Metro Rail, and then seeing my work in that, I went into specifics such as building washrooms inside the metro station. So it's like every small thing that an engineer needs to give focus to, and then seeing that I was capable enough, and I still had 1 week left in my internship. I was given the opportunity to work in a live project, building the Bahrain Mall car park. So I assisted them in making that. So my advice would be, do something that can assure you that you want to do something in engineering, and the best which you can do, which won't be very monetarily heavy, would be either an internship or a research project.
Moving from one of the most popular majors, engineering, that we encounter, to one of the more interesting majors, but least popular ones, hospitality. We're moving to Hishan, who was accepted to Cornell's hospitality school, which is widely considered to be the best in the US, if not the world. But Hishan, I would like you to talk about your journey to Cornell within the context of maybe 2 points. You yourself are a British curriculum student. You have a sister that studies in the UK. You also went on a summer program to Oxford, right? But then you decided to apply to the US, and even then you primarily focused on business programs, and you were accepted to the global BBA program at USC, University of Southern California, which only accepts about 36 students or so. But then you ended up at Cornell for hospitality. Quite an amazing journey. Can you take us through some of the steps?
Yes, so coming from a British curriculum school, it always seemed like going to the UK for higher education was the easy and obvious route. But to really explore my options and to, because the easy choice isn't necessarily the best choice for me. And the year after I'd spent a summer at Oxford, I decided to mirror that experience in the US. So I spent a month in Columbia University, majoring in business, minoring in debate. And even though both experiences were completely eye-opening, I thought the latter was simply life-changing, in the sense that the flexible curriculum, the fact that I could choose whatever I wanted to study within business, because at the time I knew I wanted to study business, but that's such a vast topic that I wasn't sure where within business I wanted to go into. Did I want to study accounting, finance, consulting, banking, marketing, so on. So that was one aspect that the US definitely beat the UK for me. And another thing was the fact that in A-levels, so in my school in Dubai College, the British curriculum means that we have a 2-year linear course where we take our exams at the end of year 13. And I don't think this course really agrees with me in the sense that I find myself performing better over certain semesters or in unit tests, for example. And again, that system goes in favor of the US. So that would definitely be why I chose the US over the UK. But in terms of why I chose Cornell over USC, I think it was the fact that a lot of people assimilate, they don't assimilate hospitality and business, but they're very much intertwined. Hospitality includes basic microeconomics 101, the same courses you'd be taking at your first year in Wharton, your first year at Marshall School of Business at USC. And those courses really appeal to me more. The running and managing of a hotel or a restaurant seems to me more interesting than intensive business analytics, for example. So after looking at both courses in detail, I thought I'd have to also consider applying to hospitality, which is why I decided to apply for what is widely known as one of the top schools in hospitality. And so I never obviously you can never go in expecting to receive both Cornell and this course in USC, but being in that position, it led towards Cornell.
It's also interesting to see the admissions trends this year. Believe it or not, USC's overall admissions rate has dropped to 10.6%, just a notch above Cornell's overall admissions rate at 10.4%. So that was another interesting development. I think most students and parents are aware of how competitive the Ivy League schools are, but they don't really understand that even a university like USC is now achieving or approaching those same levels of acceptances. So very difficult to get into both programs, but particularly the global BBA, which allows students to study 1 year at Bocconi, 1 year at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, 1 year at the Marshall School of Business at USC, and then the 4th year is up to the student. That is also very highly competitive and an incredible achievement that you were able to realize. without question. So it's nice to have those types of choices. Going back to the theme of British education, what I find interesting, Meeran, is actually you came again from a British curriculum school, very rigid approach to academics. I believe you took 4 A levels?
Yeah, 4.
And now you're very fortunate to attend a dual degree program, which is marrying together 2 very different fields, which is probably something you could not have done easily in the UK. Can you tell us a little bit about why you were attracted to the Viper program, how you think the experience at DC will contrast with the US, and why it was your top choice?
So even at DC and choosing my A levels, I wanted to have like a wide spread of what I was studying. So I picked physics, math, chemistry, the usuals, and then I added English literature, which was something that not a lot of students do. I wanted to have a subject which just allowed me to explore a completely different field, and that alone set me on my path to the US universities, because I knew I couldn't just do one field. I want to explore different fields. And talking to a lot of engineers, they say they loved the science, the math of it, but they also loved taking the humanity courses that the universities offered. So that got me into the US. And then during my 4 years with my extracurriculars, I never really looked at my extracurriculars as like, oh, I'm going to do this so I can get into this university. I looked at it more as, I want to do this because it's fun. I want to do this because I want to do it. And that's an approach that I feel like every single one of you should have. So at the end of it, when it came down to September, and I looked at my brag sheet, which is a sheet that Hale makes you do, which has all your extracurriculars and all your achievements, I realized I had a lot of research, and I actually did research at UCSD as well last summer to do with engineering. I was modeling a esophageal deflection device, which is a medical device. And then I also built solar panel powered fans. So I had a lot of research in me, and I realized I want to do engineering and I want to do research. And then I found the Viper program at UPenn. And it was just a mix of everything I wanted, because the Viper program it stands for the Bachelor program in integrated energy research, which is a engineering major with a major in the College of Arts and Sciences. And you spend 2 summers doing research in terms of renewable energy. So I had my solar panel energy, I had my research already, so I seemed like a good fit. But I think the thing that I want to stress to you guys is, don't make yourself a good fit, become a good fit. I realized that my extracurriculars and Viper's program was really streamlined, and a lot of people told me, 25 people out of 600 people, you're not going to get in. But I knew I was a good fit, and I knew that everything I did led up to this, and it really felt like the place to be. So I said, I might as well apply to the Viper program, even though it's a shot in the dark, and luckily I got in.
It's amazing, and I think a lot of students are under the impression, maybe from parents or maybe from school counselors or maybe other older students as well, that they need to think about reverse engineering the application process. And I need to do Model UN, and I have to do debate, and I have to do this. And when you talk about your kind of, finding these outlets for your interests that were genuine, that, developed organically, that is something that really worked for you. It not only helped you get in, but it helped you be satisfied and fulfilled in terms of how you were spending your time. Do any of the other panelists have similar stories where they felt that maybe they were pressured or guided towards one set of activities or endeavors where they really push back and want to spend their time a different way?
Yeah, so I'd say the way my school works is we have this constant reinforcement of hitting those 4 pillars: philanthropic, creative, sporting, and academic. So in that sense, I was always pressured to kind of take one big activity from each of those 4 to build my Common App resume. So I had charity committee for philanthropic, I had basketball for sporting. Academics-wise, I had academics, and and for creative, I also had music. So in that sense, I was done. But when I looked at my application, again, like we said earlier, it's not just you need these certain activities and then you're already past the threshold and you're going to be considered into round 2 of the application process. You need something that puts you outside the box. And I wasn't out here looking for that. What I did was that summer experience I just talked to you about in Columbia University, that was something that provided me with a really unique activity and extracurricular that I don't think most people had going into the admissions process. So what I had was I had a job as Oxbridge Academics ambassador for this company that ran these Columbia University programs. And the way I achieved that was I was one of the younger students in this program. Most of these students, it was a rigorous application process to get into the program. But once you're in the program, basically I was with many people that were going to college the following year. And as one of the few from a very international background, I was one of the few from Dubai. I was invited to the Dean's welcome board, by which there was only 10 people that spoke to the director of the whole program, Professor James Bosker, who's actually a professor of literary history at Columbia University. And I had a good talk with him, and by the conclusion of the program, I already made a contact. I could go back saying, I went to Columbia and I came back knowing a professor, I've got his email address. I kept in touch over the years, and last year he came to my school in Dubai. I gave him a tour of the school and he offered me this position where I go around different schools in the UAE, I give talks and host webinars about the importance of having independence prior to going to college and necessary life skills and core values one must be aware of before going into higher education. And so I put down my comment out, and in the end he also wrote my outside of school third recommendation, which I think really helped me in the admissions process.
It's all been about academics so far, but the US application process is much bigger than that. A crucial component is the personal statement. It's the main college essay you write for the university. And here at Hale, we spend, as Parth said, months, 4 months in his case, writing this personal statement, writing the 650-word essay. So panelists, why don't we start with Meeran? Can you share a little about your personal statement?
So I knew the importance of the personal statement, so I said I'm going to have to write something really extravagant. And I was going over ideas, something that I did in a cricket match, some moment like that, some moment like this. But what it came down to was I wrote something really personal to me, which was my weight loss journey. And it had parts of who I really was. It had my humor, which you've seen. I've seen you laugh. It had a lot of who I was. And I personally thought that the personal statement had to show the best of you. It had to show your extracurriculars. So I initially wrote about the charity that I had, Cricket for a Cause. And when I gave it to Dari, he said, sure, that's great, but this isn't personal. Write something about yourself. So that's when I said, at first, and a lot of you are going to go through this, you're going to think, there's nothing special about me. Nothing makes me who I am. So I realized the biggest thing in my life at the time was losing how overweight I was. So I literally sat down and I talked about my weight loss journey. I talked about how hard it was, how it really just satisfied me. And I think that's what your personal statement has to do. It has to satisfy you, and it has to satisfy a journey that you've had. And your admissions officers are going to see that, because this is the only time in your whole application that they're going to see who you really are, not who you're presenting yourself to be. And that was my biggest achievement, probably, was my personal statement.
Thank you for sharing. Marie Diane, would you like to share a little about your personal statement?
Yeah, my personal statement is kind of weird. Like Katie, my counselor, and when people used to ask us what it was about, we didn't really know what to talk about because it kind of covers a lot of things. But it's just about, so I live in Lebanon, and when you're in Lebanon, I guess maybe in the UAE too, but I don't think so because it's more diverse. But in Lebanon, everyone wants to know where in Lebanon you come from, what social class you belong to, are you Christian, are you Muslim, and stuff like that. What is your first language? And they try and they put you into a box. Like, for example, if I'm in a cab and I go somewhere, and the first thing the taxi driver is gonna ask is like, what's your name? But they don't really ask what's your name to know your name. It's just like, what's your name? So that, oh, Mahidian, it's a French name. And oh, it's like Marie, it's a Christian name. Oh, and I picked her up from that place, so she must be like on the richer side or on the poorer side, blah, blah, blah. And they put you in a box and it's like you can't escape. And I really hated that a lot because for me it was fine, but other people that come from, for example, more disenfranchised areas or areas that are dangerous or stuff like that, they're put into boxes and they can't really be their true self. And so I have worked a lot to make people stop having that reflex, I guess. Yeah, so it was about that and about like my experience with the boxing process of, yeah.
And how does this personal statement work? It works with your counselor. Students and counselors work on one-on-one basis, and it becomes a very intimate process. As you can see, although we've only heard 2 examples so far, it is difficult to predict what you're going to write about. But this is only possible thanks to the relationship the student and the counselor have. So panelists, could you share a little about your relationship with your counselor? Perhaps we'll start with Parth.
So my counselor was Tim. He's not here today, he's in Taiwan. But he wasn't just a counselor to me, he was like a friend, he was like a mentor. We used to talk about everything. We used to share articles, podcasts, and he really taught me stuff outside the application process. And that's what really helped us bond. And when it came to write down the personal statement, he knew almost everything about me, so he helped me bring out the best in me. He gave me ideas about myself, which I didn't know I could write about. So I think that personal experience, when you have a mentor for yourself who can groom you and shape you, is really amazing.
And next, I know Meeran had the best counselor, right?
he was all right. It was Dari. All right. But
is there a specific anecdote or story you'd like to share?
Yeah.
I can step outside if you
I think Dari, just like Parth said, really did become a friend to me. There are a lot of moments I could choose, but one of my favorite moments was actually once I got my acceptance to UPenn. I specifically didn't call Dari because I wanted to tell him in person, but I didn't realize that Dari was sitting there thinking, did he get in? Did he not get in? And then ominously, I booked an appointment on Monday, and he was sitting there. He told me this. He was sitting there thinking, oh, is he going to cry? Did he get a wait list? What's he going to talk about? So I think the fact that I wanted to tell him in person, and although I put him through a bit of pain and pressure, I'm sorry, it really summarizes the friendship that we've had, and it made it so much easier, again, writing the personal statement, because it truly is something that's very personal to you. So being able to share it with someone who's a friend to you and who you're really close to makes it even easier and an enjoyable experience. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to Dari for helping me out for like the 4 years. So yeah, thank you.
Is that on camera?
Amazing. I think as we come to the close of the panel discussion, as we enter the Q&A session of this afternoon, I would love for each of you to share maybe one experience that was particularly noteworthy, that was particularly formative, that maybe can shed a lot of insight to the students that are sitting here and they're thinking, you know what, maybe next year or 2 years, I'd love to be up on that panel. And I'd love to not only have secured acceptance to one of my dream universities, but to be able to help others understand what the process is like as well. And I believe that Parth and Amrit came as attendees, yes, a couple years ago. So it must feel great to be on the other side of this now, having achieved what you set out to do. But think back to when you were actually in the audience. It was not an easy process for any of you. It was not a linear progression in terms of completing milestones and simply getting acceptance to the universities that you did. So what can you share with the audience? What is the one thing that you'd like them to understand, particularly the students sitting here, wondering, how can I be that guy or that girl?
So one thing that I can say is, we all agree that no 2 people are the same. So 2 applications can't be the same way. So don't try to model your application based on someone, like the person who got into Harvard 3 years ago. Don't try to do things that he did. Try to find your own passion. Try to reflect on what you are in the application. If they see that you're unique, and if they see that you're interested in the school in a genuine way, then they will accept you. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. This entire process is about finding yourself. I mean, you get to write so much about you that you never thought you would explore. So yeah, I think that would be the biggest takeaway. Explore and have fun with this process. The next 4 years are going to be amazing.
If I just ask one follow-up question, in terms of the amount of work that goes into each application, for Stanford alone, how many essays did you have to write?
So I had this one personal statement and 12 other supplemental questions.
12. So, and how many universities did you apply to?
I applied to 15 universities.
15. So maybe another thing to keep in mind if the students here are thinking about applying to the highly selective schools is how laborious this process is, how time intensive it is, how if you do want to do a good job on each and every application that you need to plan ahead and spend as much time as possible doing so.
Yeah, I agree. I want to follow up on this. I think a year ago, maybe a year ago today, or a bit more than a year ago today, I sent an email randomly to a professor I didn't even know at Stanford, asking him for an internship. And as easy as that sounds, he just got back to me and he was like, yeah, sure, I'd like to meet you, and then yeah, why not? And at this moment, it was the moment where I was like, okay, am I ready to like sacrifice 3 months of my summer, one of my last summers with my friends in Lebanon, to go to the US and have an internship? Is it worth it? Am I also ready to sacrifice so many hours working on the SAT subjects and stuff? And my mom looked at me and she was like, well, this is it, it's now. You have 1 year. Either you decide to just continue on and live your life and be happy, but maybe you won't have the results you want, or you just really work and you sacrifice everything that you can, and you work as hard as you can, and you're gonna get the college of your dreams. But you really have to work, and that's when I realized I was like, okay, it's only 1 year and it's gonna change my whole life, and so I really have to work as hard as I can. So I worked on my SATs the whole summer. I would wake up at 5 a.m. and have 2 hours with Melusi nearly every day on Skype, because he was here and I was in the US. And then I would go to the internship, or try and show up early to give a good impression. I would give my work on time, and then I would come back and work at home for the internship and for the SAT. And it was really a hard summer. I had a lot of emotional breakdowns, and I was like, I'm not gonna make it and stuff. But really, if you work hard and you just say, okay, it's 1 year, it's fine, I'm gonna sacrifice that 1 year, and then I'm gonna have fun in college, I'm gonna be surrounded by people that are like me, then it's really worth it. But you really have to work hard. If you don't, then don't do it, because you're not gonna be satisfied with the results that you have, and it's not going to make sense. You really have to work as hard as you can.
Something that I want to add, or rather contradict over here, see, it's very important that we sort our life out in terms of academics, extracurriculars and all that. It's very important that you spend a lot of your time building your portfolio, as we say it. But it's also very important that you take time out for yourself and ensure that you don't miss those really important moments. Like, if I look back over the last 4 years, probably the largest things that I regret is maybe not celebrating that birthday of my friend 2 years ago, because I sat preparing for my SATs, or I missed out on that opportunity to go for X movie because I was doing something related to academics. Yes, I'm not saying that you don't need to study or you don't need to spend that time with your extracurriculars or whatever it is, but do ensure that you take that small amount of time to spend with your friends and family.
Ishan, would you like to share your experience and your insight into your journey and what maybe the students here can benefit from in knowing?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I think the largest hurdle I had to overcome in the application process wasn't the amount of work I had to do, but the actual standardized tests specifically. So in my school, a lot of people only had to take the SAT once at the beginning of year 12. They took it once, they got 99th percentile, and they were already set for their reach schools. And this was extremely demoralizing for me, because when I first took it, I was nowhere near 99th percentile, and almost everyone else had already moved on. They'd done their standardized tests, they were now on subject tests, or they were now doing their personal statement or essays for their colleges. And so I felt like I was running behind. But just like we've said before, it's really important not to compare yourself to where other people are in the process. So I took the SAT another time, and the second time around I still didn't hit that 99th percentile mark, which is really what I wanted, to give myself a decent chance at getting these top schools. And so I decided to switch to the ACT, started from scratch again, and then third time around I finally hit that 99th percentile. And even though I was behind people in the sense that they'd already done their subject tests, I was just as content in the sense that I knew that by spending extra time on my standardized tests, I wasn't sacrificing or risking not getting admitted into university because of my scores.
Meeran?
Yeah, one last piece of advice I'd have is, when I first met Amrit, he told me that story about him missing his friend's birthday party, and I was quite the opposite. I took every opportunity I could to talk to every single person or join every single club I could, and I think that's something that all of you really should do. Like, I know I'm like just leaving high school, but high school were some of the best years of my life already, and I think it was in part to do with I joined so many clubs that I met so many people. Like, I see one person from my school here today, and like, to every single one of you, just join every club you can. One, because it sets a foundation for you, for like, you have so many things that you do. And secondly, there's no way of finding your passion unless you explore everything possible. So that's the one thing I'd say, explore everything you can.
Amazing stories, amazing insight, amazing journeys, all very different, but all culminated with the same result of ending up at a university which is not only highly selective, difficult to get into, but an excellent fit. So thank you very much and congratulations. Thank you to our panelists. With that, we'd like to highly encourage all of the attendees to raise their hands with questions to the panelists, and yes, there's one over there, great, so that they can answer them directly.
I would like to congratulate the lady and the gentleman for their acceptances. However, if it's possible for them to share with us their scores, IB, GPAs, it seems to me that all of them are top in their fields. It's very inspiring for other students to replicate what they've done, but it's also interesting to see what their grades and credentials were to be accepted to Ivy League schools. Thank you, if they don't mind.
Yeah, so I had 2 A stars, 2 A's predicted in my A levels, and I had a 34 ACT, and while they sound very impressive, they're very average at my school. And I think the one thing that you need to understand is your grades don't matter as much as you think they do. They'll get you past the first hurdle, and then afterwards you need to shine in other ways, whether it be through extracurriculars or essays. So I think work really hard for your exams, obviously, but don't let them stop you from applying to the top colleges for sure.
I'm in the French system, so I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I had a 17 over 20 average, which is really good. I was top of my little class, but then the big class, I don't know how you call them, but then the big class, I was like in the top 3% maybe, but I wasn't like the best. And so everyone who went, because we had another MIT acceptance like maybe 3 years ago, and that guy was like brilliant, so everyone looked at me and was like, why are you applying, you're not gonna get in. But I knew it was like, I had good enough grades, not the best grades ever, but good enough grades. And on my SAT, I got a 1510, yeah, 1510.
All right, I study in the IB diploma program, and I was predicted a 41 out of 42 in my predictions. Apart from that, in my SAT, I got a 1480 in my SAT 1 and double 800s, as I mentioned before, on my SAT 2 subject tests. What I would like to add on over here is when I thought I'm done with all this testing, I looked back and I saw the only weak link in my application could possibly have been that I did not cross that 1500 mark. And then I came to Dari and I spoke to him. I asked him whether I should again try or do something like that, give it a last ditch effort. But then Dari told me something very important, and that is, as they've already mentioned, scores are important, but they aren't the most important, and they are definitely not the only thing. So if you think you have a weak link in one part of your application, don't worry about strengthening that. If you think you can balance it out with something else that would in a way make up for it. That being said, try to knock it off in your first attempt itself.
I would also say, so for me, again, I go to a British curriculum school where you take A-levels. A lot of people think that because you're applying to an Ivy or a top reach school, you need 4 A-levels or an EPQ as well. I actually started year 12 with 4 A-levels, mathematics, English, politics, and economics. But at the end of year 12, I dropped economics, which is quite ironic considering 9 out of my 10 unis I applied for was business and business management. So for me to drop economics seemed like quite a bold and risky move. But after talking to Nana, my counselor, and I realized because it's the US, it's really the only place I could make such a move without it having repercussions on the outcome of my application. I went to my economics head of department after dropping the subject, asked for a nice reference, showcased all the work I'd done to account for that amount of work that I'd done during year 12, so that wasn't discredited when I went into the application process. And for my predicteds, I stuck with 2 A stars and an A in mathematics, politics, English, and ACT I got a 33.
So I am from the CBSE's curriculum, and
Which is Indian curriculum.
Yeah, which is the Indian curriculum.
Yes.
So I had a 98 predicted score out of 100 for the grade 12 exams. On the SAT, I had a 1540. But there's one short story I want to share. So initially, the first time I took the SAT, I got a 1510. And I tried to take it again last year in March and was conflicting with my grade 11 final exams. But I thought I could manage both, and I went ahead and tried to do both. I screwed up the SAT, I screwed up my grade 11 exams. So what I'm trying to say is SAT scores are not that important. You need to figure out other stuff, like don't miss out on competition, or don't miss out activities to do, or don't miss out on school exams just because of standardized testing. Because once you cross that 1400 or 1450 barrier, it's not about if your score is 20 points higher or 30 points higher. It's about your other stuff, how well balanced you are, or how excellent you are in one other activity. So scores matter, but only to a certain extent.
It's true. I want to share a story because I was really shocked actually. I went to the weekend that MIT does before my first, and I met a guy that's from Portugal, so he's also international, and he got a 1430 on his SAT, and he got into Harvard, Stanford, and MIT, and now he has to choose one of them. So
Wow.
it's fine.
This is actually very interesting because I think, again, one of the assumptions by many parents and students is, especially from particular cultures, is that, no, that score is so incredibly important and you live and die by the SAT score. But that's not the case. I remember I had a prospective student come to me who had scored 1600, perfect score, on his SAT during his sophomore year. And his parents thought, that's it, everything is over. We are just going to have the ability to pick and choose which universities we're going to go into, where the truth is it's just one factor of many that's considered. But once you're in, as you said, a range that's acceptable, the other factors tend to play a more prominent role. But that was extremely useful. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Are there any more questions from the audience? Yes.
If you guys could go back in time, what is one thing that you would do differently? If anything.
If you had a flying DeLorean, no one gets that reference, no? Back to the Future? Yeah, some of the older people. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently?
I think, as I mentioned before, I would take time out to spend with friends and family. Probably, be a little more social. People always associate being social with me already, but I felt that I have missed out on a few opportunities that I could have grabbed on if I hadn't focused more on my, on strengthening my application as such.
I think the thing I would have done differently is that I was kind of all over the place, so I have a social life and work and blah, and I only realized that I should focus on one thing at a time after, and so for example I took I took the SAT 3 times. The first time I did fine. I wanted to improve, and at the same time I had exams, and I had like a lot of outings and stuff, and I didn't want to like sacrifice on any of them. So I tried working on my SAT and working on for school and going out and stuff, and it was just too much. So I actually dropped the second time. And so if I would go back, I wouldn't do that SAT. I wouldn't even practice for it, and I would just focus on like going out that time and working for school, and then maybe as I did in the summer, focus on that SAT. But just focus on one thing at a time, because if you juggle between many things, you're probably not going to do them right.
For me, probably nothing, because as my mom would say, everything happens for a reason. And yes, I wrote some bad essays. Yes, I had some bad subject tests. Yes, I had one bad ACT. I had bad essays again, probably. But everything that happened, I learned from. I learned from every single thing that happened bad. And probably, I mean, I'm young, but I'm going to sound wise. But in life, you're going to fail. And those failures have put me where I am today. And I'm very, very happy where I've been accepted and where I'm going to. So probably nothing. That sounds really cocky, but yeah, probably nothing.
Amazing. Part?
Oh, no, what I wanted to say was exactly that. He stole my answer. Yeah, but it is true. I mean, there are things that happen for a reason. I mean, even if I change one thing, I don't know if I'll get into Stanford again or no. And that had been my dream for a long time. So whatever happened along the way, all the failures, they taught me something. It showed me that if I didn't get into a certain school, I wasn't meant to be there. And I didn't have to waste my time on it anymore. I got into my dream school, and that's what that mattered.
We like to call them learning experiences, not failures. How about you, Hisham?
Yeah, for me, like I said, I waited till the end of year 12 to drop economics. So if I could go back, I would definitely just drop it, I think, after the first term immediately. Because I knew at the beginning that doing 4 A-levels isn't an easy feat. And I felt that I knew I could strengthen the grades of my other 3 had I not just led economics along for a full year. So that's my one regret.
Great. Any other questions from the audience?
Over there.
Raise your hand up high. Yes, please. Thank you.
This is a question for each one of you individually. What would you say was the most difficult component of the admissions process?
Who starts?
Whoever would like to start. Yeah?
Okay, I'll start. I think for me, the most difficult thing was the essays, because my first language isn't English, so writing the essays was really hard at first, because I would spend like hours writing maybe three sentences, and I would get back to my counselor and she was like, no, this is not good, you know? And it was really hard, especially that I had to apply early, so my deadline was like November, and I started in September, and I had my personal statements and all these other essays, and I had supplemental essays for my research and all of this, and it was really hard. I remember for like a week, at some point, I would come back home every day from school, try to write essays, spend like half an hour trying to do that, and then start crying. And my mom really thought I was depressed. But after that, when I started when the essays started to look like something, it was fine. But starting to write the essays was for me really, really hard. Yeah, that was the hardest part.
I think, as she did mention, and as most students would mention, essay would be the most difficult part, not only because people find it very hard to write, you know, what he mentioned before, what Parth mentioned before, being the STEM versus the English kind, I think that also resonates with me. But most importantly, it is because the US universities demand so many essays. Like, as he mentioned, Stanford alone demanded 12 essays as supplements. And there are so many universities, each of us apply to 15, 20 universities. Even if you average every university asking 3 essays, it goes to 60, 65 essays which you write over a course of say 2-3 months. So it's a very difficult process. And what I would like to share over here is it's very important that you trust in someone throughout this process. So what I had was definitely I had Hale, but more importantly I had my parents who are also here. My parents, of course, they have seen me grow and they know every small aspect of what I've done, right? So most of the ideas for my essays, and as I mentioned before, there's a fine line between uniqueness and being original, being original and, getting that right fit in your essay. And I think as students, our parents know best about what we can write and what, could possibly get us into the best universities. So I would say trust your parents in that process.
Very interesting.
For me,
Fantastic. Good
I'd
job.
say the toughest part of the process was the personal statement. I found the actual general supplemental essays, no matter how many there were, I actually found those quite good because for a lot of them the prompts were quite different. So you always had opportunities to write about something different. And for those supplemental essays that had very similar titles, already half your work was done for you. But regards to the personal statement, again, like Meeran said, it's tough to find something that speaks directly about you rather than the stuff you've done. So what we did, my counselor and I, we listed 10 objects that had significant value to me, or 10 things. And after the long brainstorming phase, I ended up talking about the significance of a photo and how that resonated with me and the implication it had in my life and what I want to achieve in the future. And although that seems like something you can never come up with, it eventually happens. The longer the brainstorming phase takes, the closer you are to getting to where you want to go.
I think for me, it would be dealing with the word limits. So the personal statement is supposed to be 650 words. My first draft was around 1800 words. So yeah, if you're going to ask me what's most important to me, you can't expect an answer in 100 words. So the fact that my answers were really long and I had to cut them down again and again, make 20 drafts for each essay, that was the most difficult part, and shaping them down to perfect essays. Yeah.
But I think also, I guess for all of us, the standardized tests were challenging because they really, for me, my SATs were like my first kind of failure in like my life. I always had decent grades and I never like felt like I was failing. But for the SAT, I had this feeling for a really long time. Sometimes you feel like you're not improving and you're working, but it's not working, and it's like, it was hard too. The whole process is really, it makes you grow a lot.
Yeah, for me it was probably understanding that I really wasn't anything special. And I think Dari did that to me, mostly when I had a counseling session right before, or about a month before this past summer. And again, we had the brag sheet out, and Dari asked me, look at that sheet and tell me one activity that no one else in the world has. And I thought I was like the top of the world. So I looked at that sheet and I went, no, 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 no. I was like, Dari, you've really done this to me. And that's when I knew you don't have to be something special. You just have to be, again, a good fit for the university. And that prompted me to go seek a research position, and I tried to stand myself out, tried to make myself stand out more. But always ask yourself when you're applying to these top universities the question that Dari asked me, always.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. When I first met my counselor, he told me all the universities that you're going to apply to, around 15 or 20 of them, there's still a small chance that you get rejected by all of them. So that really made me humble. It's like, no matter how good you are or what you've done, you can never know if you're going to get accepted or get rejected. You don't know the person who's reading your application will like you or not. So I think, yeah, you need to give in your best shot and just hope for the best.
Actually, the last 3 Stanford students I had, the 3 students accepted Stanford I had before you were all waitlisted or rejected by Johns Hopkins, believe it or not. But it's part of the process, rejection, and of course you can only attend one great university, and you have to make sure that you continue to keep focus on that very salient fact. We have time for 2 more questions. Yes? Yes.
So I'm in 9th grade and I'm studying in an Indian CBSE school. So my question is, does it make any difference if you're studying in a CBSE school or if you're studying in an O-level school to get into an Ivy League college or some good college?
It doesn't. So
I will start with this question. Just very quick. It's, as you can see, we have the pleasure of hosting panelists that come from a very diverse curriculum of high schools. We have French bac, we have IB diploma, we have the UK A levels, and we have a CBSE student going into Stanford. So quick answer for you is no. There is no preference as to which curriculum the university wants. And by no means should you try to go for multiple curriculums. That's a big no as well. What universities want is for you to challenge yourself within your school, within the curriculum that is provided to you. If you're an IB student, take the most difficult IB courses. If you're an A-level student, challenge yourself with an EPQ, or perhaps try 4 A-levels, and so on.
I would like to add on one thing here, because I personally feel that I've been part of this process. In 9th and 10th, I did the Indian curriculum in the form of ICSE, and then I moved to the IB diploma program. And I don't know whether it stood me in better stead in terms of admissions, but I feel the IB diploma program has given me something of a more international experience that probably gave me a right pedestal for the US universities in terms of experience. That being said, I never got to experience ISC, so maybe even that curriculum would have given me. But as a person who's experienced both, I felt IB gave me the more international exposure.
Okay. So to answer your question, even though you're in a CBSE school, the admission officers are going to look at you at your specific pool, like all the CBSE students put together. So they're going to compare you to other students who are in CBSE board. They're not going to compare you to an A-level or IB student. What matters is you make most of the resources that you have in your school. So if your school has a drama, club, and you haven't joined it, and your school, and the admission officers know about that, they're going to ask you, why didn't you join the drama club? Or you had the opportunity to be in the student council, why didn't you join that? So what matters is you make most of what you have in your school and how you perform there.
I think there are different curricula that are right for different types of people, right? I would just add that if you are going to be an engineer, for example, it may be easier to enroll in British curriculum where you only take 3 classes or 4 further maths, physics, and chemistry than try to tackle maybe the IB, which will compel you to take a foreign language. But I think there are no obstacles into what you can achieve no matter what curriculum that you pursue. But however, there are certain curricula that are better suited to certain individuals, but finding that fit is also very important. Have another question?
Just wanted to say, really, thank you for keeping it really real with each and every one of you, especially with the personal statement and what really, again, is the edge besides the SAT scores and the factors you were talking about. And I was grasping that, and really, again, and then just last 10, 15 minutes, something that was a little jarring was I heard you guys say that you applied to 15, 20 universities. So you did say that you have your fit, and I'm assuming that, let's say those are 4 or 5 universities, while you have your dream school, still apply to it. But then I was just a little taken aback with 15, 20 schools. So are we understanding that you want to have how many safe schools?
It's more the fact that the US admission process is so random, and you'll find this especially with international students. Like, there are a lot of students in my school who are like pegged to be the ones to get into the IVs, and they weren't, and there are a lot of students who were pegged to not get into the IVs and who did. So it's more of a process of finding a lot of schools that, again, fit you. There isn't one particular school that, obviously you have a dream school, but there isn't one school where you'll succeed at. In fact, I believe if you make the most of every opportunity, you'll succeed at whatever school you go to. But applying to 15s is more of just trying to get into the US, because it is actually so random.
I think the ratio should be like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So 1/3 safety schools, 1/3 reach, and then 1/3 targets. Yeah, I applied to 9 schools. So I actually applied to like maybe 4 targets, 3 safeties, and then 1 middle, because I couldn't find a middle that I liked. But yeah, I was so scared when I applied to 9, because I had everyone around me apply to like so many, But it's just like all the other options that I had, I didn't feel like I really liked. And I didn't feel like if I get into that school, I really want to go there. So I didn't even bother to apply. But obviously you shouldn't apply to like one because that's like gambling. But yeah, so it's like, it depends. But I think it's 1/3, 1/3, and then 1/3.
I think I just wanted to interrupt. I have one of my friends applied to four universities and he didn't get accepted anywhere. And I think it's more of a fact that if you can apply to 15, and it is expensive, you'll see, but you might as well do it. You might as well hedge your bets. You don't want to come out of the process thinking, I wish I did this, or with any regrets. So I'd say it's more of trying to get into the US.
Yeah, you don't want to end up without a university.
Yeah, I think 15 is maybe the upper limit of appropriate number of universities to apply for if you're a very high achiever. If you're not a very high achiever, maybe closer to 12, let's say. But the truth is that I think every single panelist here was rejected by less selective schools than they were accepted to. So when you apply to the very, very top universities, you don't know. A Stanford may like you and say yes, but then a Cornell at the same time may not.
Even Johns Hopkins.
Or Johns Hopkins, or many other universities. So at the very top end, yes, I believe you do have to apply to more without question. And we've seen that experience bear out. However, I think 15 should be the absolute maximum.
Yeah, I think also it's not like applying to 15 super good schools, because then it's like the same thing. You need to apply to a range of schools, ranging from like ones that you really feel like, oh, I think I'm gonna get into that school, to like, that would be my dream to go there. Because at the end of the day, it's better to have a school that you don't really like, but at least to have a school than to have none of them, you know? So yeah, I made sure to apply to 4 that I knew I would get at least one of them. And then the rest I focused on schools that I really wanted to go to.
I'd like to add another thing. So when you make your college list, that will be around 5 to 6 months before your college application process starts. So in the list, make sure every college you can answer one question: why do I want to go here? It shouldn't be there just because someone told you. You need to have 2 to 3 solid reasons that you think you'll thrive there. Because college is going to be the next 4 years of your life, and I think everyone should have a reason that, yeah, this college will give me this, I will be able to do this at this college, and that's why I'll be happy there. So that's one thing you should keep in your mind.
Do you have one final question that we'd like to ask? Yes.
What age or what grade did you guys decide that you want to work towards going to a top American school? Just to know how late or how early that you decided to focus on.
If I can qualify that, what grade did you start and what grade did you wish you had started? If you could go back as well.
So I thought about US in 11th grade, the ending of 11th grade. Before that, I always thought I'd go back to India. And then I realized that US actually gives you the chance to study different things at the same time. You can study physics, theater, economics all together. And in India, you can't really do that. So I started as late as ending of grade 11, and I still made it. And I wish I'd started in grade 9, or someone was there to tell me about it back then.
All right, I'll give the other end of the spectrum, because I've always wanted to go to the West to study, and in terms of actually deciding US, I was pretty sure since 9th grade that I want to go to the US to study. And given that I had all the time, I took the process very slowly. I did proper university research, like basic research, why I wanted to go to the US, what are the opportunities that I get in the US what I don't get elsewhere, and what other countries would give me better options or equal options, opportunities as a undergraduate student. And after all this, I'm like, okay, yeah, US seemed like the best fit, and I felt that I could do it well. And then I came for the Ivy Insider session, which is exactly 2 years from today, like 2 years back from today. And that's when I realized that all that I had, all that I knew, what I did in the last 2 years was pretty much nothing, because the US university admission is so broad that you cannot do it on your own, especially if you don't know it well. And that's when I engaged Hale to help me, and that's when I realized that what I did was so broad that I had not ever thought about streamlining it in terms of course, in terms of universities, in terms of regions, and there's so many things you can think about. You have to think about, in fact, and so that since I started early, I realized I had enough and more time to do it the right way.
For me, I think I decided I wanted to go to the US at the end of year 10, which, like I said, is when I finished doing both those summer programs, one in the UK, one in the US. Although I could say from like an early age, I always knew like I wanted to study in the US. That was something that I always was interested in. But I think I would definitely recommend doing summer programs in the area you're considering studying. Not necessarily the exact school, but especially the region. If you're still not sure whether you want to go to Canada, UK, US, wider Europe, you should definitely do that.
Yeah, I started, I knew I wanted to go to the US since I was like 4 or 5, because like all my family, like not all of it, but like a lot of my family members, they studied abroad, and so they went either to Europe or to the United States. And I liked the United States more because, first of all, I don't know why, I always liked it. So when we went like visiting and stuff, I really liked the US. And also I liked the fact that you didn't have to like choose a major before applying, because I was very undecisive. One day I wanted to do political science, the other I wanted to do like, I don't know, gene editing and stuff like that. So I was really, I was not decided yet on what I wanted to do. And I started with Hale education, I think, summer from 9th to 10th grade. So early, very early, I think maybe the earliest here, like 3 years ago. But the first year or so was not really hardcore, a lot of, it was more like getting to know your counselor and getting to know a bit of schools. And it was very chill, so it wasn't very stressful. I didn't start stressing out like when I was 14 years old about university. But it was good because it was a good introduction, and I could apply to good summer schools for the other years and stuff. So I recommend maybe not 9th grade, but beginning of 10th grade is a good time to like start thinking about these things, so that you have plenty of time, because it's a lot of time that you need to put in, and the earlier you start, the better.
For me, as like a year 9, year 10 kid, I didn't really know much about higher education. I knew I wanted to go to the US, not because I knew how good the schools were, but more because I liked the culture. I really liked the sports there, the entertainment there, so I knew I wanted to be part of that. So in year 11, I had a meeting with Peter, and I didn't really know what had to go into like applying to the US. I knew about the standardized tests, and I thought that was it. But there are so many more aspects, and I think one of the best things that Hale made me do was they make you do these uni info sheets, which are a piece of paper with like a bunch of questions about certain universities, and you just get to learn more about universities, or a specific university, and you do that for a bunch of universities. And from those sheets, I realized I kind of like this university, I don't really like this university, and that's what helped me make a college list. So I joined in to sum up my answer, I joined in year 11 with the aim of, I didn't really care about higher education, I mostly cared about the culture, but through Hale I understood more about universities and which ones I'd enjoy.
Just to make sure, you have to fill in those sheets yourself. Yeah, they don't have information. They make you do the research, and yeah.
Very good. Well, with that, I think we will conclude our discussion. I think that was very informative. I want to thank everybody again for their honesty and their insight. We will all be available to answer questions individually, but thank you as well to the audience for being so attentive and inquisitive. Thank you for joining us.